And how long have you been at UT, Stacey?
I'm going on 5 years. So I think I'm still new.
This is my 20th year. I can't believe it.
I bump up against a lot of people who have that kind of track record, which says a lot about the school. So that's kind of cool.
Hey, Katie, really excited for this episode. We talked to 2 faculty members, 2 leaders on campus in the School of Social Work, working in the space of global engagement.
Things that I love about this conversation, the kind of specificity of the skills that these folks are doing in the classroom, the ways they're giving our students at UT a real scaffolded opportunity to go overseas and have these really transformative experiences. It's such an excellent example, literally, of what starts here changes the world, and what happens in that world really changes us. Impact.
From the University of Texas at Austin, this is The Other Side of Campus.
All right. Hello and welcome to The Other Side of Campus. I'm Stephanie Holmston, professor in the Government Department in the College of Liberal Arts.
And I am Katie Dawson, associate professor in the Theater and Dance Department in the College of Fine Arts.
I'm really excited for our conversation today and want to begin by just simply introducing our guests. We have Noel Bush-Arendades, University Presidential Professor, Associate Dean for Global Engagement, and Director of the Institute of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault at the Steve Hicks School of Social Work. And Stacey Jordan, Clinical Professor and Assistant Dean for Administration and Planning in the School of Social Work. I met Stacey and Noel because our paths crossed at Texas Global's virtual exchange event. I was really impressed with the School of Social Work's focus on global engagement and the impact that both of you are having in that space. So I'm really excited to learn more as we dig into the important role that higher education has in community engagement, and that community engagement means global engagement too.
So, Stacey and Noel, as a theater professor who literally works on the other side of campus from y'all, down the street at least, I'm new to some of the work that you both do. And Noel, if we can start with you, talk to us about what you are doing right now in this area at the University of Texas.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation and welcome to our side of campus. We always appreciate the opportunity to collaborate and discuss what we're doing. So in my new role as Dean of Global Engagement at the School of Social Work, my opportunity really is to build this new initiative under Dean Alan Cole to give the opportunity to our students, our faculty, our alumni, our lifelong learners, and to think about that whole community and invite them to these initiatives for global engagement. So strategic partnerships, creating the opportunity for learning globally, but also learning here in Austin, in the state of Texas, what it means to engage globally and expand our creative thinking, and then how we would bring that back home as learners here in Austin and the state of Texas.
Yeah, so cool, Noel. Thanks. Thinking of that set of initiatives, how do you actually prepare students to do that meaningful engagement in that global work?
I think, well, we work within a committee. So we have the best committee at the School of Social Work. First, I want to say the largest, the best committee. So it's really important to think about how students and faculty come together and think about those issues, your question exactly. And one of the things that we do is we think about that in terms of value-based learning and think about what do we want to achieve sort of in the end. So working back. And so our values really are to bring these opportunities or these initiatives to our community in ways that people can understand that the world has something to teach us and we have something to teach them. So we approach all our partnerships globally or internationally with a lot of humility. that we come with a set of gems and they come with a set of gems. And so we always have to think reciprocally in terms of that engagement and that relationship. We also have to think long term. We don't want our relationships to be a one and done. So how do we think long term in terms of the resources that we have and how we put it into that? And we all don't come at it with the same level of expertise, and we don't come with it with the same level of resources. So we have to do some level the field, if you will. So we are coming from a very resource rich environment. And so we want to be able to acknowledge that where we go. So those are the value bases that we work with in our committee as we establish these new initiatives.
Wow. So I'm hearing sort of the long-term reciprocity, holistic approach to global engagement. Bring me into the classroom. What does that sound like if I were a student in your class, if I were an undergraduate student in your class? How am I developing the capacity for value-based engagement?
Yeah, I'll give you one example that I'd like Stacey to talk about the class that she's developing and how she's doing it as a clinical faculty member, because she's been doing this for a long time. So my class for UGS, I teach a human trafficking course. And in that course, to try to bring the world inside that classroom teaching, I have developed a supply chain research assignment. And essentially what the students do is I have them pick a product that they use every day that they perhaps love. So it might be a product like makeup, or it might be something they eat every day that they look forward to eating, a fruit, a vegetable, a protein. Wow. Or it might be something they wear every day, a particular pair of jeans. And they look two ways at that product. First, they look at the company that makes that product and what the company is saying about their supply chain. And then they look at the product itself. So if you will, what are the ingredients, if you will, that make up that product? How does the company source that product? And then they have to trace back the supply chain. How does the company procure the products? And what they find is most of the time, those supplies, the procurement, trace across the globe. And so through the help of our excellent UT librarians, give a shout out to them because it's a really hard research project to do. They find that eventually, most of the time, those products and what they say about those products are supplied by labor in other countries. And so then they are able to get original documents from those countries and what those countries are saying about their juxtaposition to federal law or international global law around anti-trafficking. And so they put all that information together and they're able to critically think, where does the US and companies and policy sit critically, globally, juxtaposition them. They're at the center of using this product. And so that's a way to bring the world into the classroom. The very last thing I'll say about this is the very next assignment is a call to action. So what I don't want to leave students with is this idea that they can't do anything about it. And so we do a call to action in the very next assignment so they can feel empowered and have some agency around what do we do next.
Noelle, you really make me think about the kind of importance of authentic learning in our classrooms at UT, the ways you are situating that question and these larger, bigger issues that help kind of create a really strong need to know for those students in their everyday lives, in the things that they care about. I have a 19-year-old daughter. Where her genes come from does matter. So I just appreciate the ways you are starting that location in the things they know and inviting that as a way into that inquiry. That's just really powerful. So
yeah, and they usually love this.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
This generation is very much informed about how they are influencing the world by the every decision they make. So it resonates with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some research in that area as well. And I think this is a group that cares very much about using their buying power in ways that have meaning. And I'm sure social media has part of that. Yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting. Stacy, can I ask where you were before you came to UT? You said you were out in at public education policy spaces. Yeah.
Literally out in the wild. So I was in DC for a decade. And then before that, New York City. And before that, Rhode Island. And before that, Massachusetts. So I've been all over the place. Yeah. In education policy.
I was in DC for 8 years before coming to UT. So I was 95 to 04.
Okay. I think I was coming in as you were leaving. Okay. About, yeah.
If
you could also do a sort of intro to you and some of the ways that your work connects to some of these ideas, we'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. So the uniqueness of the UT social work program is that our students in their second year have a practicum placement. And one of the options they have, which is under the umbrella that Noelle oversees, is to serve or work in an international setting. And so what Noelle was beautifully explaining is experiential learning, like learning by doing. And what we do to prepare our students for that is making sure that they're clear about training them to navigate ethical dilemmas, thinking about different frameworks and resource disparities that might come up around that. Self-care and resilience is really important because finding yourself in sort of a different setting with a client base that might be something that's new to you could offer some level of culture shock. So making sure that they're ready for challenging environments. The other thing that we also do throughout your training as a social work student and definitely comes to fruition in your final practicum placement is reflective practice. And so building habits of having sort of the skills to have critical self-reflection, understanding your positionality as a student as it relates to the individuals or the issue that you might be sort of dealing with at that particular point in time. And most importantly, which I think relates to the placement that I'll talk a little bit more about as we continue, is crisis and disaster response. And making sure that students have the skills to they're not going to be experts because they still are in learning mode as students, but understanding the importance of conflict zones, disaster relief, emergency mental health, the things that rise as a result of things that could happen as a result of war or displacement. And then, of course, program design and evaluation is very important. So data collection, analysis, making sure that they have sort of at least the starter to understand how to measure impact, an introduction to what different interventions can look like. And last but not least, because we are social workers, where would we be without advocacy? So building the skills around human rights, policy analysis, and coalition building are things that we want to make sure that they go into that placement with an understanding of.
To get into some specificity now, are there particular exercises or things that you feel like help your students, particularly right now, be ready for the complexity of this moment?
Well, I'll start, and I'm going to pass it on to Noelle. It's really hard to prepare students for the unknown, right? And the wonderful thing about this particular offering that we have in social work, which is a global experience, is we do have students who have never traveled abroad before. So there is a seminar course that they do take in preparation that covers some of the things that I talked about. We do bring in speakers and lecturers who have real-time experience to get them ready. But part of the program is also working with them throughout when they're in that placement and also encouraging them to work with one another from different countries. And I think Noel was wanted me to start to sort of talk about our capstone program that we're designing, where we're going to have students who are in global place programs working to one another, considering the time difference. We're also going to be bringing in our faculty members who are conducting research in other countries to sort of talk them through the research that they're conducting and also sharing their experiences. And then there's also always a space for students to talk about what they're seeing and doing with one another, which is a great way for them to grow collaboratively.
You make me think really quickly about the idea of transformational learning, and so much of our ability to transform our shifts or beliefs or growth tends to be tied to sometimes a disorienting dilemma or a moment where the challenges occur. Can you think of a particular moment or story of where one of your students was in one of those programs and had that moment? I bet there are a lot of stories.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, I have the great privilege of serving as a faculty liaison for United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And so it was founded in 1950. We have we've collaborated with them for 30 plus years. So we've been sending interns there for that long. We are the longest serving institution that has worked, higher ed institution that has worked with UNHCR in this capacity. And we are the only school of social work that sends interns to UNHCR. So it's pretty important to us that our students have this rich experience. To answer your specific question, in the past couple of years that I've been working specifically with interns, they have faced the full-scale invasion and sort of the impact of that as it related to Ukraine, the refugee displacement in Syria. They have worked with individuals on the ground as it relates to the Democratic Republic of Congo and sort of the humanitarian emergency efforts around that. They've also worked with data analysis with displacement as it related to Venezuela, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Sudan, and Haiti. So there you have disasters that happened that were a result of what was happening in the world, hurricanes, earthquakes, what have you, and then you have that as a result of war. So although our students are in headquarters, what they're doing is working with the individuals on the ground who are actually working directly with the folks that are in peril, making sure that they do have the resources. So they have done specific things in terms of collecting data on what it is that's needed on the ground and making sure that information comes to headquarters, and also pulling together NGOs and other partners that also work with UNHCR to make sure that they can fill that need specifically.
Wow, Stacey, I'm really impressed, and I'm thinking about the recent Sustainable Development Goals efforts by the UN, and they certainly note this, right? That global conflict is one of the reasons why Sustainable Development Goals are hard to achieve right now in this current rate of conflict. And what you're describing, helping students through experiential learning begin to build the capacity, and that capacity is not just the knowledge that's helpful, it's also self-care, resiliency, this self-reflection, and then listening to engage really effectively. I'll play a quick devil's advocate just because I want to hear you both sort of talk about this, but School of Social Work, some students are really excited to serve in their own local communities. We draw students not only from across the state, and that is very important, but also around the world. They might want to be going back to their local place. Talk through with me this investment in global engagement and how that makes all of us better, whether we are abroad or right here at home. Why does it matter for your students?
I want to enthusiastically start and then pass it to Noel. So I think the assumption is that when we send students abroad, that we're not creating the next diplomat. Our skills are transferable, right? So to give you an example, our social work students who were in Geneva and Budapest last year, their decision was to bring that skill set back to Texas to work, one specifically on working on border issues, another one specifically in community development. So I think that that's actually an important thing to know, that if you think about the world with a global lens, you do think about the fact that social workers are everywhere for a particular reason, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a locally placed position that they're taking on or a global placed position, but just know that all of those skills are things that can add value to any issue that may arise as we think about all the things that are happening in the world today.
I'll just jump in and add that the School of Social Work global engagement, our tag is leave to learn, return to lead. Vast majority of our students who have a global experience do return to lead. The return of investment that is really important to us. I'll give you one example. I led 15 students to Northern Ireland with 2 interdisciplinary partners on campus. It was a Texas Global program, the PAGL, the Presidential Award for Global Learning. So it was interdisciplinary students. Much like Stacy described, we had a semester to prepare students, which is, I think, actually the way it should be done, because in particular, because we were bringing students to a traumatized community, a traumatized state, if you will, 30 years of civil war under the Troubles, 25 years post-peace accord. So Northern Ireland was the situation, the context in which students were going to learn. And the title of the program was Developing Leaders Using the Context of Historical Harm, Restorative Practice, and the Economies of Well-Being. So students, for the semester that we had them, were learning about those 3 things. And it was very much about bringing it back home to Texas. And so I'll give you an example of one group and what their project was to bring it back home. So they were learning in Northern Ireland from our experts. And they developed a storybook for elementary school age students. And it was on restorative practice. And they picked a relevant topic, which was when police use violence that was happening in the context of their undergraduate education. And it's beautifully done. And it took them 2 semesters plus, where they're still working on how to get it published. I just met with them recently and talked that through. The dialogue in the book for these elementary school children that it will be read by is very much about what they learned in using harm and how you get to a restorative ending. When they returned, they realized they needed an illustrator, so they put out a call for a volunteer illustrator who would be acknowledged in the book. The illustrator in it is a UT student, and she did a phenomenal job in bringing to life their main character throughout the book. So it very much will educate students in elementary school, particularly in Texas, but hopefully beyond, using the expertise of historical harm and restorative practices in Northern Ireland, but it's relevant to Texas and beyond. So I think that global education is the idea that we design programs that are cutting edge, and we develop leaders who can be expansive in their thinking, but also think about how the opportunities, they recognize the problems wherever they are to bring those home. And to me, that's key. And they also expand and influence. Now, they were going to meet with people who are true experts in their field in Northern Ireland. But when you have that kind of exchange and students ask questions, those questions are thought-provoking for those experts there, as they learned. So they stimulate conversation in a different way by asking thoughtful, well-prepared, intellectually stimulating questions that they have been, spent a semester thinking about because they've got the background to do it.
Oh, Noelle, that project sounds amazing. I do a lot of work around, it's kind of sort of a participatory action research framework where how are we working with students? I do this in K-12. I do this at the university and at the graduate level of like creating a project that speaks to an authentic audience and getting to design a research piece. And I love that you're working across like formats and symbol systems of a children's book story, because of course, children's books are at the essence of an idea, right? They have that shorter amount of language, and the visual is such a powerful way to get us really clear about what we're trying to communicate. And actually a fun inverse story of what you're sort of talking about. I'm doing a ton of work and have been for many years through the U.S. State Department in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I've run like 8 projects there, working with interethnic groups of teachers who won't agree on everything, on the historical memory of their post-conflict spaces, but they all really want to make education better. So I work with English teachers, which is the language that's outside some of the conflicted spaces of home language. We have done countrywide book reads where students at UT have helped me design websites using a US novel like The House on Mango Street as a starting point to work and curriculum that uses arts-based methods to teach that book for high school classrooms in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we've developed lessons with them and vice versa that all sit on this big website. And we're using the US context as a way in to have some of these more complex conversations around identity and who we are and complexities around home and construction of homes. So I actually really just resonate with this idea of a book or working with text as the stories that we share back and forth across cultures that allow us to open up or clarify ideas or have the kinds of dialogues we need to be having in spaces.
Yeah. Katie, I really resonate with, the context. I spent 2 years in Romania in 94 to 96. So I also visited Bosnia. Yeah, it is beautiful. Now that was very post-conflict when I was there. Yeah, people were struggling, but when trauma is so really at the surface, one of the things that social workers learn to do, and for you, you're doing this beautifully too, but we teach this is sometimes hitting it head on is not the strategy. You use this idea like this children's book and all the strategy you just described beautifully to really get at the essence of continuing dialogue, which is really important, that brings communities in conflict together to have the discussion, to build the trust. So those are essentially what you're doing is the essence of what we teach in the first year of how do you get at things that are so contentious. So I really appreciate those aspects you just described.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and this could be to Stacy or Noelle or you, Stephanie, being able to be a part of that kind of experience profoundly changed me. It really did. It taught me so much more about this work that I had done for a very long time. Getting to watch folks use it in a different way, as a way for them to come together and work on a possible educational future that was positive, and I watched rooms where people just opted not to talk about that anymore or to shift away from this because they knew they had this opportunity to dream something positive forward. And it ended up really shifting for me how I teach, what I teach, the ways I value things. So I'm interested if either of you are interested in sharing how is this work, this really important and kind of amazing work you've been doing, changed to you in different ways?
Well, I think all of us are better if we have the opportunity to travel, right? I mean, I think the global lens is one that only adds value to your perspective. The broader your aperture, the more you take in, the better your perspective. And I think that as far as the students are concerned, I mean, they are bringing, as Noelle noted, these skills back very specifically. As far as research impact, it's going to inform how we actually apply international methodologies, which is a new aspect for us in many ways. Here at the school, bringing that aspect to our students. Community and civic life. We are training civic leaders, right? And the broader the perspective, the better they are at bridge building and having sort of a broader lens in doing that. And then a global mindset, as I started off with, is just better for personal growth and just a better leader wherever that ends up being for you. And then you can't move forward and without understanding the importance of partnerships and how to collaborate and bring in different perspectives and different thought partners in order to tackle or address whatever issue is before you. And I think having a global lens, a global perspective, and more importantly, an experience, I think adds value to all of those things to make for a better student experience.
I mean, I'll give one example of how I learned deeply using a different construct. I worked in Dubai for about 5 years. The Sheikh was building responses to domestic violence, child abuse, and human trafficking, which are my areas of practice as a social worker and research. So as they were building those, they were getting a lot of consultation, not just from me, but consultation. But I traveled back and forth for about 5 years in my role, providing expertise in, how we might do it here. They came here. One of the things that was clear that we do differently is when we bring people into shelter, we separate the family in intimate partner violence. And it was something, when I started out my career in this area, I was an MSW student intern, and it was something that I kept hearing the survivors, the victims talk about, that they didn't really want to be separated from their abusive partners. They wanted us to fix them. And I struggled with that as a social worker who didn't have a system. It was early. It was the 90s, right? Very early 90s that responded to that need or that desire. So fast forward, I'm now a faculty member, and I thought, this is the framework. They're doing that. Now, they weren't bringing the whole family into shelter, but they were meeting the needs because that was the structure of their culture. They weren't going to necessarily separate the family. They were going to meet all the services of the family because it was their culture. And so moving into that without judgment is one of the things that I think our students learn, is there are different frameworks for the way people across the world think about solving solutions, the social problems that they face. And it opened my eyes to a whole different way of thinking. And I had been working and living across the world for several decades. And it was just a deep appreciation that even this many decades later, it was still a potential and still shifted my thinking. So I think that broadened worldview, sharpening sort of that critical thinking, is the possibility that international exposure, global living and learning can give to you that we don't necessarily get in the classroom.
This is really sparking for me a deep appreciation for the intimacy of building meaningful partnerships to solve these pressing problems, and what it takes to build the capacity to see and hear each other. And what you're describing really weaves the global into the local, because I think it's true that we see ourselves more clearly when we meet others with different experiences and in different spaces. And that global lens broadens our perspective, but then invites us into these different, as Stacey was saying, sort of different thought partners to address really the challenges that we face. And your comment as well, Noelle, about the dialogues that are being demanded of us now, the dialogues with different ideas and different perspectives, so crucial for what we need today. So thank you both for bringing those experiences and describing your work. I find it really inspiring. What do you find most inspiring about the students you work with in global engagement?
I'll offer a quick anecdote, and I invite my colleague to join in, Noelle. The best thing, and this isn't something that one can measure, is that when they are in the seminar course here, they are curious and they're a little bit scared and just have no idea what's going to happen, right? a couple months into their experience there, we will visit with them. And the person that I find during that visit is a very different student than the one that started off. They are excited, their eyes are wide, they're talking a mile a minute because they're taking all that information in and they're enjoying it. And I think in all of the examples that I might have, it was never as scary as they thought it would be, and it was obviously much better than they thought it would be. My first question to my students usually is when I check in with them on Zoom, because we do that before we do the in-person, is where are you going this weekend? Because the world is your oyster. For the students that are in Europe, it takes only 4 or 5 hours or 2 hours or 1 hour to go to another country. So that's usually how we sort of start the conversation. So I think that experience, which isn't one that's usually documented in their learning, is sort of the informal travel that they take in, which makes for a really different student that comes back to Texas than the one that may have left several months ago, all in a positive way.
Awesome.
What's most inspiring, I think that it does take a lot of courage to go overseas and relocate for this short period of time and sort of take a leap of faith that they're going to learn something pretty profoundly. I think that they gain deeper empathy skills, both for the experience that they're having, but also
100%.
The idea about where other people are in the world. I think they learn more about the social, geo-economic position of America in the world, that you can't do that here. It's not until you have conversations elsewhere that you get that kind of perspective. I think they have a stronger sense of responsibility to apply what they've learned when they come back. I mean, it really does feel like that. We have doubled the number of students going for their internship, which is a 4-month commitment this year than last year. So something's going right. But I'm also struck by how they become co-teachers with us. They really inspire us to develop, meaning faculty and staff, to develop better programs through their reflection, as Stacy has talked about, through their lived experience overseas, to rethink our own assumptions, to design better cutting edge programs. So we do a lot of that based on what they come back with, and it inspires us as educators.
What you're describing and what Stacy mentions, I love this idea of meeting the students afterwards and they feel like somewhat of a different person. And I think some of that is also a tribute to what you do in the classroom to prepare them. So I think of maybe families that have the privilege to travel internationally, and that can be very important and eye-opening. But in the context of the exploration of higher education, you cued them to invest and to watch and to listen. And then Stacy, your conversations with them while they're there, and then follow-up opportunities when they're done. I mean, when we embed that into this sort of broader endeavor, it really makes that profound change so much more central to that experience for the students.
Agreed.
And if I may, I just want to offer that this is one of the main strategic priorities here at the School of Social Work. Our Dean, Alan Cole, has invested time and resources in making sure that the program that Noelle oversees and is one that is sourced so that students can have a full experience. And he does that because he understands what we've been talking about, which is the importance of having the global lens and having opportunities for students who may not otherwise have them.
Yeah, it's all about our systems being aligned, and the fact that we have that buy-in is what it takes to do the work. Maybe to wrap us up, if you each want to give our listeners one takeaway, one kind of big idea here at the end about the importance of global community engagement, Why do it? What's the value?
I think a nice way to end it is with the tagline that Noelle has adopted for OGE. That's it. That says it all.
You want to say it one more time, Noelle?
So our tagline is leave to learn, return to lead.
Amazing. I feel like that should be our tagline in life. Thank you both so much for making this time out of your busy and very important work to join us on the other side of campus. It's been a true honor and a delight.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Noelle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Other Side of Campus.
Well done, everybody. Absolutely amazing. Amazing.
Was it really?
Yes.
Okay.
We do this a lot. It was amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
Well, maybe down the road you can interview some of our students, maybe faculty around research.
It would be nice to do that too, Stacey. Yeah, we talk a lot about how are we trying to get different viewpoints. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Stacey. I mean, gosh, to hear what they feel about that experience.